for that. All right. It says preparing. I don't know what that is.
There we go.
All right, there we go. Welcome everyone to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine. I'm joined once again by Brian McNicoll.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, and dog-faced. Pony soldiers.
All right. I love that. You know, actually, with this convention going on, I thought maybe, we'd get a few things. Maybe we'd get a few more, somebody to say something that we can add to this list, but we'll see. We've got
Come on, man. You a junkie? They test you for cocaine?
Well, we could add some of those Biden things, yeah. My wife was actually saying to me this morning, I guess there was some video. She doesn't get it. She kind of peruses through Facebook. She doesn't have a lot of friends, and she likes to keep it that way. But she said there was some video that was on there, and I guess it was on some of the Biden gaffes and some of the things like that. And I guess she's fairly politically aware, but she was unaware of some of the things that he had said, and she was pretty shocked about it.
It's incredible. Like there's a lot of tape out there of this guy not having a clue what he's doing or who he's talking to.
Well, and that's right. And this is the thing. I mean, my wife, I think this is actually the first time she said this, is that, she's like, I'm really beginning to doubt his ability, kind of his mental acuity and all this stuff. She's paid attention, but I don't think she'd paid that close attention. She watches this video, which I don't even know what video it is, but I know there's tons of them out there. And it finally, just kind of hit home to her. It's like, whoa, people
right.
are going to vote for this guy?
One of the ones I think is most effective is they show him speaking in like 2015, 2016, and then they show him speaking now. I mean, you can really see a lot of decline. I mean, it's a big difference. I mean, he was a lot sharper and on the ball just 4 or 5 years ago. And it's like, he was interviewed the other day by Cardi B, the rapper. He didn't know who she was. It was kind of if you watch the interview, it's kind of a moron interview, to tell the truth. I want free stuff, He's like, well, we're going to get you free stuff, girl. But I mean, he introduced himself to her as if, they didn't know each other. I'm Joe. Name's Joe. It's like, we know who you are, so.
Why do you think we set up this interview?
Yeah. Otherwise, I would never be talking to an old fossil like you. I mean, I'm an old fossil.
Really, I mean, for Cardi,
you wouldn't talk to me.
For Cardi B, what value would there be to talk to an old white guy in general, unless he's running for president on the Democrat ticket, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
and it's like, the other side of that is they're not paying any attention. I guess they think they can reach their hip young audience that way or something. But I mean, most people look at like who Cardi B is and what she has recorded and said publicly in the past. And they're like, why is this person a part of this? Right? I mean, it's, what she's does, it's fine. You can do whatever you want, free country and whatnot. But I mean, that's who you're putting forth as an important conversation with the presidential candidate is, this person who's, talks about, I mean, you can't, I'm trying to sit here thinking like, how do I characterize this for this show? And it's like, you kind of got to see for yourself. There's really no way to say it without venturing
right. You got to keep it clean.
The road.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
That's right.
Well, the thing that was interesting about that interview was just that you talked about the free stuff. I mean, he basically came out. He sounded a lot like Bernie Sanders kind of a thing, right? Placating, kind of talking to her audience or what he thought her audience was. But he's doing Cardi B, and you've got Chris Wallace and others saying like, hey, well, what about us? I mean, we're major cable network. George Stephanopoulos, I mean, they have completely avoided the big networks for interviews, and he's gone to Cardi B. I mean, what's the deal?
Well, he can't answer questions. Every time he gets asked serious questions, it's a problem, even from, unhostile media. I won't say friendly, that's, in people's, but, even the Post and the CNN and so forth, he gets in trouble every time. And if they're citizens asking him questions, it's a disaster, right? He wants to fight people and he brings up non sequiturs. He seems to agree with whatever anybody says. Can we do that? Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do twice that many. Okay, all right. I mean, he wants to get to where he agrees with everyone he talks to. He doesn't stop and think about, like, can I do that? Is that within my power as a president? Someone asked him the other day about, mask mandates. Yeah, we're going to have a national mask mandate day one. Okay, well, you don't have the power to do that, right? Why do you think none of these things have been done by Trump? Why didn't Trump just say everybody shuts down March 13th, everybody reopens May 13th or whatever? Because he doesn't have the power to do that, right? And Biden doesn't think about any of that. He's just going to have mandates, stop drilling, he's just stop all fossil fuel production on day one. How are you going to do that? You don't have the power to do that. And that's he just, whatever anybody says, and that too came from a question at a debate. Well, what will you do about it? Well, I'll stop all energy production on, would you stop all energy? Yeah, I would do that. It's like, you can't agree to stuff like that. You got to, part of being a politician is learning to say, hey, there's some of this stuff is too crazy. We cannot do it. Or, I like your idea and it fits into proposal A that I've already made, right? But, we can't do that as a standalone thing,
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. If Biden was president and he issued an executive order on the mask mandate, would that hold up?
I don't know what basis he has to issue that.
Okay, I mean, somebody could. I mean, it could easily be challenged, right? So
yeah,
right. So I think what you're pointing out though is kind of a long-term flaw in politics, where with politicians of all stripes promising all kinds of things or saying they will do all kinds of things, that they have no power, no authority to do so. But the average American voter doesn't realize that. And right. So, they take those promises or those pledges or whatever you want to call them, and they think, yeah, I'm going to vote for that guy because he said I'm going to do that. And they're to a large part of at least like in general, from a political standpoint, I guess, the mask mandate or shutting the economy down type of thing like that might be popular with the liberal Democrat voter who thinks that's the way to solve, COVID, the coronavirus problem, and that we do that and our lives will be great after 90 days, which is definitely not the case. But they'll buy into that because they just don't really know any better, because we do have, as Rush, Limbaugh has said for years and years and years, there are low information voters, and the public, we have a lot of low information voters. So it's very easy for the politicians to promise the sky, the moon, whatever, and not have to really worry about delivering on a lot of those things, because in the end, you can't hold their feet to the fire on things that they said that they had no authority to do in the first place.
Right. Well, two things about that. One is he gets it with politicians coming out and promising things, even things they can't deliver or don't have the power to do, is not really new, right? But every time someone throws out an idea at you, say, yeah, we'll just do that too. That is to me, a quantum step more dangerous than just a politician making promises on the stump that he may or may not be able to find a way to keep. Right? This is the height of suggestibility to someone with the nuclear codes. Right? That's dangerous. The other thing is, like, if you go on the Twitter and you read what people are saying, when they go to criticize Trump about this, my position is that Trump has done a really good job of COVID response. When this started out, everybody was talking about 2.5 million deaths. We've had 150,000, maybe. They say 100.
Except they have it at 170 plus.
Yeah, but I mean, we all know that that's spiked up a lot, probably more than 20,000. But let's say 170. Okay, so that's 8.5% of what was projected. That's a pretty good job to keep it to 8% of what they thought it was going to be. What did Trump do? He, secured the ventilators, the PPE, the meds, the beds. We didn't lose a single person over not having our supplies in the right place. And we had to ramp it all up immediately, with all this coming down the pike at us at once, right? And, so that's what he did. Now, like someone the other day, he doesn't have a plan. Well, that was his plan. Okay. And then he had the plan of the PPP program and the $1,200 payments and, spiking the unemployment for a little while and no evictions and no foreclosures, right? That's the plan, right? Those are the things the president could have done to help, right? And, if someone else, if you know something else, write into this show and tell us what else could he have done, okay? And they say, oh, the lockdowns didn't start soon enough, whatever, it broke up too soon or whatever. That was not in Trump's control, right? That's state control. No one understands like where federal power ends and state power begins. So when they say Trump needs a plan, they want top down Washington run everything, circumstances on the ground be damned, right? So, should South Dakota have done what New York City did? I don't think so, right? Hardly anybody got sick or died in South Dakota. New York City still has more deaths from COVID than Texas, Florida, and California combined, okay? The next three most populous states, the three most populous states, the other members of the top four combined, right? So you cannot argue that, top-down government knows best policy was the way to go here, right? The other states like thought for themselves a little bit, and instead of like controlling everybody's life, try to let people, handle this themselves and take the level of risk they wanted to take, right? It got much, much better results, Also, if you compare our results to Sweden or, virtually every country in Europe, what do you find out? We are the lowest deaths per million, right, of the entire industrial world.
Yeah, as you talk, I mean, one more thing I want to on this particular kind of topic or subject here, which is you were saying that the suggestions made by people, it's a dangerous thing or whatever to accept. What is a politician, what should they be doing though? I mean, and because this has become part and parcel of our discourse, and that lots of ideas are thrown out there by the public, in public forums and things like that. Should the politicians, would it be better for them to say, we'll take that into consideration. We need a study to see if it's feasible or legal. I think that has some bearing, some basis.
Bill Clinton was great at that. He was great at, I feel your pain, and people laughed at that slogan, but it really was an effective way of saying, I understand the concern that you raised, right? So it hurts me too. So if I can find a way to help you, I will. So people walked at, one of the complaints about Bill Clinton was, people walked out of the meetings thinking he had promised stuff that he had not really promised, right? Then you come back and, hey, I thought you promised this. I know I didn't, right? I said, I feel your pain. That's not the same as I will solve your problem,
right?
So, people, oh, he's double talk, Slick Willie and all that. He told the truth, right? I feel your pain, not I can solve your problem. So, but I mean, that was one way to handle it. Trump handles it differently, but, you're drinking from a fire hose if you try to take on Trump on stuff like this, because he's, he has a fully developed idea of how he wants to do almost everything, right? He came up, if you think about the stuff we just talked about, a whole litany of stuff on the medical side, whole litany of stuff on the economic side, ready to roll out. Big thinking, out of the box plans that exercised all the power of the federal government that the federal government does actually have without encroaching on state power. You would not have gotten that out of Hillary Clinton. You would not have gotten that out of Joe Biden. You would have gotten, big government, one size fits all, force people to do what they won't do, what we can't get them to do otherwise. We didn't have to do any of that. We had people, Trump used to line up those executives, right? Every afternoon at those press conferences, my company makes, jockey underwear, right? But we're not going to make jockey underwear. We're going to make masks because we need masks. And, we're lining up to help America. I mean, think about the pride of those companies and saying, we did something heroic for the country. We harnessed corporate power in a way we haven't since World War II. You would have never gotten that out of Biden or Hillary. They just said, okay, the government's got to make these things. We'd have had a government mask factory, right? because
Right.
that's how they think. They can't think outside the box.
All right, I want to make sure we spend some good chunk of time here on the news that people are trying to pay attention to theoretically, which is the Democratic National Convention. So that we've now had 2 full days of this event. We had Joe Biden, being nominated, accepting the nomination last night. We started off on Monday with Bernie Sanders, John Kasich, Michelle Obama keynoting. A lot of Trump hatred on night 1. Not really quite sure what night 2 brought. They brought out the rising young stars, but they tried to pack a lot of people into a short period of time. And I'm not sure how well it worked, and I'm not sure what message was really delivered. I guess, Jill Biden, was out there, Bill Clinton. There's so much here to discuss, and I'll ask you about this. But I mean, we have Kasich, okay, the former Republican governor of Ohio, a guy who was, to me, very good in Congress on budgetary issues. He seemed to have a lot of expertise and focus on the budget and fiscal constraints and things like that. And yet, he's out there talking about the crossroads thing, and then talk about, is Joe going to turn, make a hard left turn? I don't think so. I know the measure of a man, but Biden, he's already committed to something, over $10 trillion of spending if he gets elected. Then you have Michelle Obama talking about some things, and one of the things I thought that she kind of really touched on the edges of this, because she was famous for, and she mentioned it in her speech about, when they go low, we go high. But I thought she really came borderline low, and I'm probably being even generous to that. Why she talked about going low and high, and yet I thought that she kind of started to go a little bit low. She made herself look bad in that sense with that. And then Bernie, I don't know. You have Kasich talking about trying to play up Biden as kind of the centrist moderate guy, and then Bernie comes out there and more or less says, our agenda is still there,
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of mixed messages there. And then finally, my last thing before I'll let you go on your thing here is that Bill Clinton talking about, Donald Trump's performance in the Oval Office.
How to conduct yourself.
How to conduct yourself. All right, go for it. There's so much there.
Yeah. So that was, someone I read this morning said that, last night was the night of the hypocrites. They had, John Kerry talking about, stay out of the way and let the government conduct its foreign policy when he has done nothing but meddle in foreign policy. Sally Yates talking about politicization of the Justice Department. It's like, get reals. And then Clinton saying, lecturing us on how to conduct yourself in the Oval Office when, the most deplorable conduct we know about in our lifetime, the Oval Office, was him, right? So I thought Obama's wife came off as preachy and ineffective. It was kind of a boxed up speech. She'd given it a week before. She didn't even know who the vice president was. Let's see who else was in there. Who else was on it? Who else has spoken so far?
Cuomo was there.
Oh, Cuomo, right? Oh yeah, Cuomo. He was on there telling us, how to respond effectively to COVID. Like, no one did worse than you. Not just in the United States, but in the world. New York's response was the worst in the world. It was the most counterproductive, right? It actively killed people. It had, that big ship hospital and another hospital built that had 23 patients or something, right? Emergency stuff thrown up to store these patients so they would not have to be put in nursing homes and so forth. And he put them in nursing homes anyway.
AOC
trotted out for 1 minute to second the nomination of Bernie.
Right. Which apparently she was supposed to do. I mean, she was asked
right. Well, she was supposed to. There was a lot of, can you believe that? Well, it's like, that was her job, and that was all agreed on beforehand.
But she didn't talk about Biden.
Right. Well, I mean, but she's endorsing Bernie.
Yeah.
I mean, she's seconding Bernie. So that was the time to talk about Bernie. But it's also, and I guess she got into a spat with Kasich over some of his remarks. right? The fight between the progressive wing and the, the less progressive,
Yeah, really.
minimally less progressive wing, I guess you could call it, is not over. Their thing is not settled. They've taken out Green New Deal, Medicare for all, universal basic income out of the platform. Also changed the wording on Israel to be less anti-Israeli, because they know that they cannot win on what the progressives want for the country. If they're actually running on that as a platform, they'll get killed. So they're softening their messages. The people who thought that they would really stand for these things have been played, and they're starting to dawn on them. So that you may get out of town without a lot more uproar over this, but the fight's not over what the Democrat Party wants to be and wants to project to the world. So then I guess they had Christine Todd Whitman, Susan Molinari, Colin Powell. They trot out these at Kasich, these people that haven't supported a Republican in 20 years to say, oh, we're not going to support the Republican this time. It's like, you never did, right? Colin Powell has voted for every Democrat since at least 2004. Why is he trotted out as a Republican anymore? What does he do that's Republican, right? Everything he does supports Democrats and hurts Republicans. How do we tell if someone's a Democrat or a Republican, So, I don't know who that's supposed to, we just get all mad and say, well, you never listen to that guy anyway. Same with Kasich. He's long been a traitor to the party. And, in all fairness to Kasich, to set him aside, you're right. He has had some serious policy chops. But what happened to that message is it was at once cut government to the bone and fund needless wars, right? Which cost a lot of money. So it wasn't really reduce the size, scope, and cost of government. It was really, fund my priorities and starve everything else, right? The hypocrisy got exposed. And there was also nothing there that people could really dig their teeth into and support. So, that branch of the Republican Party lost. They did. They've been, dispersed. Trump, Obama beat him, and then Trump eliminated him. So now you say, well, you don't want the Republican Party to vote. Of course not, because they want to win, right? And what was before was, Republicans saying, hey, guard the border, cut taxes, deregulate, really actually do these things, be strong in the world, make NATO pay up, quit paying UN to do things to hurt us. That's what we wanted done. We wanted those people talked to and set straight. And Trump came along and did it. And these other guys like Kasich did not. And that's why they're out of the party now.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the thing too is that exactly who are the Democrats trying to convince with trotting these people out, right? I mean, Kasich, as you said, I mean, here's a couple of other problems I have with Kasich. Is that one is that he was very early to sign on for the Medicaid expansion. He was grabbing that money, right, which a lot of Republican governors, majority of them said, no, we're not going to do that. Right. And, and he didn't show up at the convention in 2016, which was held in Cleveland. So right, there's no doubt that Kasich is very bitter and very angry at Donald Trump, and right, and the never Trumper type of movement. It's not a very big movement. You're not really going to get a lot of votes out of that movement. And as you said, I mean, look, Susan Molinari. I mean, she hasn't been in Congress for how many years now? Christine Todd Whitman. These are people that were, moderate Republicans at best when they were in office, and they haven't been in office for a while. Meg Whitman was a failed, candidate for governor in California, right, and so is anybody really paying attention to them? And I don't know, for younger people, if they know anything about Meg Whitman, actually, it's that she has been a part of this, this new thing called Quibi, which they launched earlier, just before the pandemic, which they invested a ton of money in, and is basically failed. They've signed up all these stars to do all these little videos on Quibi, hoping, and they gave it away at the beginning like you should do. And then after like 90 days, you're supposed to sign up and pay, I don't know, $5 or $10 a month. But hardly anybody's paying that. They don't want to watch it. So Meg Whitman, I mean, she's failing again. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of VC capital, VC money into this thing that is apparently going to totally evaporate. This thing is going to flop. And because I listen to enough tech podcasts, even the tech people are like, what is the purpose of this? What is she and Katzenberg and all these guys doing? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I don't see that this is doing a whole lot. And then all these people they were trying to trot out last night, I understand it's good that the Democrats have gone first for a lot of reasons, but one of them on a technical aspect too is that Republicans have a chance to see what's working and what's not working and how they're doing it, and they have time to adjust what their plans are for next week to make it smoother, more effective, more appealing, that type of a thing like that, because very few people are watching on television. We don't really know how many people are watching this thing streaming, but there's no doubt that the audience is probably down from what it was 4 years ago, and will probably be down for next week too. I mean, it's just
a lot down of things, about 30%.
A lot of things have changed, so that I don't expect that the Democrats nor the Republicans are going to gather the same type of audiences. There is something to be said when you're watching a convention, whether or not it's the DNC or the RNC, when you can see the pomp and circumstance, all the people out there doing things and stuff like that. Some of it is totally boring, but there's a very festive atmosphere nevertheless. Right. And there's none of that now. So I think you lose a little bit of that. So, the DNC has seemed to have gone to the path of like, well, this gives us an opportunity to throw more people on the stage by doing all these different things. But that doesn't necessarily, more is not necessarily better, right? So, and AOC 1 minute, I don't know. I mean, we talked about this a little bit last week. I mean, it kind of limits the damage she could potentially do to the Democrat Party on the other hand, but it does have other people are saying like, hey, look, she's one of our better speakers. We want to hear more from her and less from like John Kerry.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, when the Democrats are sitting there watching and saying the part of the party that's actually enthused about voting is being ignored, right? We're on Al Fromm Democrat Leadership Council party, right? That's what's being presented there, because that's what they think is the winning formula, is to say, hey, we're sane, decent, normal people. All this talk you hear about how crazy we are is not true, right? I don't, it's about, it's down 28%, I think the viewership
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Tucker Carlson got more people last night than the Democrat convention. Trump was 47% on Rasmussen on Monday. It was 48 yesterday. It was 47 today. So it doesn't appear to be tearing a lot of voters away from him. It's a 3-day rolling average. So, it could still, you'll probably see him go down another point or two as the week wraps up, right? But, it is a minor program on TV right now. You're going against NBA playoffs, and all this kind of stuff. There's suddenly some other TV options to watch, and this thing is like it cuts around. The production values are kind of hit and miss. Some of them are really good, and some of them are less. But it's like this thing we're doing now. It's like you can tell that we're not in the same place, and that it's not like what we usually do. And it's like the sound's not 100% perfectly right, and so that, like you say, it hurts them both, and I think it hurts the Republicans too. They're trying to do kind of the less is more thing, although they're starting to add a few speakers. I guess you saw they added the couple from St. Louis.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Pointed the guns. That'll be interesting. The wife held an event for Oliver North one time, but I don't believe the husband has ever been known to do anything for Republicans. So, he may be a red pillar. He may have come over to the correct side.
Yeah, who knows with that at all at this stage. And Trump.
One day, the special moments of the convention. One of them is, when the candidate clinches and the balloons fall and everybody's like, "That's our guy," and like he didn't seem to realize what was happening. It was like some people came in behind him and started throwing streamers, and and I think that Jill whispered in his ear, and it's like, hey, no, this is the big moment. And he was like, and then he tried to crack this weird smile, and I don't think he knows what's going on. And I think people are looking at this thing, the little few moments he's had in this convention and saying, So, and that's the independents. Like, the hardcore Democrats are not going to switch. Hardcore Republicans are not going to switch to him. So, you're fighting for, my best math is Trump is about 45% of the people in the country are going to vote for Trump under any circumstances. About 42% are going to vote against him under any circumstances. So we're fighting over that 13%. Now, that sounds like he's ahead. That doesn't necessarily mean he's ahead. It just means that his support is pretty rock solid. There's very few people who are now saying they will vote for Trump who have any meaningful chance of changing their mind.
Well, since we're talking a little bit about polling before I move to the other part about the conventions again, it's just I want to throw out this question to you about this CNN poll that came out the other day that showed a significant tightening, in the race. The Biden lead had gone from like 14 points in June to just 4 points, which is within the margin of error. There's still a lot of polls out there showing wider leads for Biden. I mean, is this something that we're going to see as more of a trend, or is this still an outlier? And in the poll, one of the things that was interesting was just that they showed that there was still a lot of people are going to vote for Biden was because of of the hatred for Trump, not as much as the other way around. And I'm kind of curious as to Biden. They're trying to portray Biden as an average guy, the nice Joe and whatever. And he definitely comes across in most cases, except when he makes these kooky gaffes or loses his temper, is that he doesn't seem to be as a big a target for animus or hatred or dislike like Hillary was. So
yeah, we talked about that months ago. It's like he's harder to depict as a complete jerk than Hillary.
Right. So I'm wondering as we're getting closer and closer to the election, whether or not any of that's going to be a factor at all. That people who they didn't really like Trump, but they really hated Hillary, and then maybe they break for Trump at the end. I'm not sure that the same thing would happen. It's like, don't really like that type of thing, but I don't know.
What replaces dislike is senility. Right. I mean, it's not the same people are going to look at this at the end and say, he's not really with it. Right. I mean, that's a noticeable decline. Right. He is more likable than she is. I think, I wonder if you noticed that after Jill Biden's speech, there were a lot of tweets from people on our side saying that was a good speech. She's a good and decent person. Right. Lindsey Graham, Rick Grinnell, who's a really pro-Trump guy, and there were others. Okay, so I think the strategy. I don't think that's an accident. I think we're way past the point where there's any accidents at what gets tweeted in these things. But I think their strategy is, don't beat them up, don't make them look like jerks. You can point out Biden's corruption, which is there, and but even he looks like a sort of a passive partner in his corruption, right? It's more that he's so inept that these things happen on his watch rather than that he actually malevolently went out and did these things, right? For instance, his son got it, he visits Ukraine, then he comes back, then his son is on the board of an energy company who, despite knowing nothing about Ukraine or energy, making $83,000 a month, okay? So, how did that happen? They said, well, we help you with anything, Mr. Vice President. Yeah, my son needs a job. Okay, we'll hire your son. Now, is that the worst crime in American history? No, it's not. But, it's putting their interest above ours, right? The interest of the Biden family above ours. So that kind of thing, will become inescapable for people to understand. The other thing that will become inescapable for people to understand is that, this Kleinsmith guy who pleaded to, I can believe that since the last time we talked, right?
Right. Yeah.
I guess his actual court appearance is today. He actually enters the plea today and has to allocate it to the crime, which will be extremely interesting. But that's the tip of the iceberg, right? There's a lot more to come. He went first because he was low hanging fruit. And, he has, you know, they've known he was going to plead guilty for a long time. So what has happened over that long time is probably he's discussed some matters with them to ease his own situation.
Yeah, I want to throw in one more thing about the conventions and Trump. Is just that Trump is in his counter programming by going around the country to battleground states and things like that and doing things. And I think he's been fairly effective in this in terms of, I mean, it seems part of the message is about the left, wing program, platform of the Democrats, the Biden campaign, calling them socialists and all these kinds of things. I mean, I think in a lot of areas that will resonate. And to me, it's hard for the Democrats to really fight back too hard against some of that because the platform is, what they've been proposing is pretty far left.
Yeah.
So
they can't really denounce it, or
right.
they cut themselves off.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have any idea or any thoughts about what the Democrats or Biden, might do against the RNC convention? Do you think they're going to do anything in particular?
Well, they're going to, their formula is, the list of lies, right? They're going to come out and say, that was a lie, that was a lie, that was a lie, right? We should have done that because, there has been a lot of lies, not, differences of opinion, but provable, discernible lies that have come from the speakers at the DNC. And, they send out a thing every night, the Trump campaign, that's like their wrap up of, what a disaster it was today, but it's not really, it's sort of broad brush and, uses a lot of adjectives. They need to get somebody who like rolls up their elbows and looks at the facts. These are the facts that they presented. Here's the actual truth, right? That Trump hasn't, Trump was late to start coronavirus response. We started before anybody in the world. Who is there saying, January 12th, we got the genome, and January 13th, he started on a vaccine group, right? The very next day. But, so somebody needs to be there pointing that out because, one thing I find out, like I do a lot of Twitter wars and stuff is, the other side is completely uninformed, like we were talking about infidelity in marriage, right? Okay, so, Jill Biden's first husband says that she cheated on him with Joe Biden, right? That before they became an official couple, they were an unofficial couple, right? And she was married to one man and she was out sleeping with another. Like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, are you saying he's lying? Are you saying he doesn't remember correctly? Because, this is the husband saying it, and she did end up with a guy. So as decent as you may think she is, she wrecked her marriage.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will give AP a little bit of credit because AP did fact check Michelle Obama.
I saw that.
And did say that, she was incorrect because she had mentioned, she went after the Trump administration and the immigration policy and children in cages being separated from their families. And the AP pointed out that this is not correct, that the cages were not cages, but they were chain link, fence kind of things like this. And that all this stuff happened under the Obama administration, her husband's administration, and that the photos that were used were from back in 2014, once again, right, during her husband's administration. And that a lot, and so, I mean, that's good to see the AP doing that because that needs to be said. I'm not sure to be honest, though, I'm not sure the AP would have done it had it not necessarily been their photo that was being used, and they were much more aware of that and willing to kind of make sure that everybody knew that they were going to defend that type of a thing.
Yeah, because the AP, I grew up in the newspaper business and, I won an AP award one time, and there's a quote on the trophy, and it's something about there's only two things that bring light to the whole world: the sun in the sky and the AP on Earth, right? And it was everybody's wire service. Every newspaper in America had a relationship with them. The way it works is you become a member of AP, and you can use its copy, but you have to give it your copy, once you once you printed your newspaper, AP could use all your stories, right? So we all trade stories and find out what's going on around the world. And so, but they have become, what they have become is they've absorbed these reporting units like ProPublica and the Center for Investigative Reporting. These are hard left groups that scraped up journalists who were fired when, journalism went through its extreme downsizing, which oddly enough was caused by Craigslist. Once there was no classified ads, a lot of people lost their jobs. But anyway, so, AP has taken a hard tilt to the left, and it can't really be trusted to be ideologically sound anymore, that it's gone too far to the left. So this, if this represents a sort of a realignment and, trying to get back to the middle of the track, that would be extremely welcome, because, especially flyover country, a lot of smaller papers, most of their, or not I won't say most, but, a lot of their national and international coverage is AP.
All right.
That's your view of the world.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right about that. Moving on to one of your favorite organizations, the agencies, whatever, the United States Postal Service. So is the battle with the Postal Service kind of over after Postmaster General DeJoy said that he's not going to, he's going to kind of basically stop some of the changes that they were making, before till after the election. The Democrats, I think, are still they still want to talk to him, and they still want to go ahead with some of their things. But has he calmed the waters a little bit? And should he have done that? Should he have kind of? It looks like he kind of gave in to the political pressure, but maybe I'm wrong there.
Well, what he said was he didn't want to do anything that had even the appearance of being, done to rig the election or to discourage mail-in voting or whatever. Previously, he had said that he could the post office could handle the volume. The post office is not the problem with mail-in voting. The post office handles, something like 55 billion pieces of mail a day, adding in 130 million votes. Even if every single person in America did it, that's not really even all that big a blip on their thing. The problem with mail-in voting is who receives a ballot in the mail, right? How is that mailing list generated? Okay, so that doesn't have to do with the post office. That has to do with the voting rolls and, who administers that and who's a registered voter and how do we find that out? And that is what we can't really try to do on the fly. I'm looking at your list here, 76 days till the election, right? That is a calamity waiting to happen. So, I guess, he wanted to say that, well, I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do, which doesn't have to do with rigging against. What he's trying to do, what he has said is, the post office spends about $200 million a year on what they call late trips. So, carrier is supposed to leave at 9 for his route. If you haven't put all the mail that goes to his route and his bag by then, the practice in the past has been, he goes back to the post office, he gets that mail, he goes back and delivers the late mail, right? So that means he often works overtime, and he usually, the stuff might get there that day, but, they're spending a ton of fuel, right? They keep driving back and forth to these routes. So what he's saying is, put all the mail in there that guy needs at 9 o'clock. Have his bag ready to go for the day. He's going to go one time. He's going to deliver it. He's going to get off on time. He's ended late trips and he has ended overtime. Now, when he says he doesn't do anything to, propriety of the election, all that kind of stuff, does that mean that they're going back to having overtime? Does that mean, because now it looks to me like, a sop to the unions, right? Because the unions are upset about losing overtime. Both postal unions have endorsed Biden, and which kind of goes against the grain of union movement, right? Union movement is not monolithically Democrat this election. A lot of unions have come out for Trump, including a lot of police unions.
Right.
So these and the APWU, the second one, American Postal Workers Union just recently did its endorsement, and go read the letter that they wrote to explaining their endorsement. It is strident and virulent, and you're going to trust those people to handle the ballots in a national election when they're telling you they love one candidate and hate the other, right? If that was the other way around, if they came out and said, we love Trump, we can hardly wait to carry those ballots, what would Democrats say then? Would they be fine with this? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, and what I think is a shame with the Postal Service is all of this stuff, because it's just that there are things that need to happen, and Joy really was trying to take a business approach and try to go through here and says, look, the Postal Service can no longer operate the way it has been operating, and they need to put some efficiencies in here. You mentioned overtime. Overtime is a big cost for not just the post office, but it happens in police departments, all kinds of things, businesses. Now, businesses sometimes use overtime as a way because they can't expand their workforce, so they'll say, okay, well, it's just cheaper sometimes for us to pay overtime and keep these factories humming or whatever. But a lot of cases, overtime is this huge expense that you would like to reduce or eliminate because it really cuts into profits and things like that. The post office
labor costs are a third higher than FedEx or UPS.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right. And we've talked too about the thing is that privatizing the Postal Service would be difficult because, they're supposed to go the last mile. They have all the delivery addresses in the US they have to go to. FedEx and UPS are not mandated to do that. They can deliver, they don't have to accept a delivery.
In fact, one of the most lucrative things the post office does is sells that last mile element. They say to FedEx, you don't need to go up in that mountain in Wyoming. We go up there every day.
Right.
We'll carry it up there for you.
They just need to do it profitably, though. That's the problem. That's part of the problem.
Charge them the correct amount.
Right.
And assess what it costs them to produce those services correctly. That's always been the problem. They make terrible deals.
Right. And a matter of fact, just for UPS and FedEx, I mean, they have been, because COVID has added an enormous amount of pressure to their whole distribution lines that they have, I think it was about a week ago, they announced they're going to add in some more surcharges for certain businesses that have certain volumes, high volumes that are a certain percentage greater than they were, say, a year ago, because they're clogging up the system, and they have to be able, in order to move the packages, they need to hire more people, they need to do things. So they can do that. The Postal Service doesn't really do anything like that. I mean, not that they have the volume, issues right now that the FedEx and UPS does, but they are not very market driven. They don't really adjust well to these things.
Right.
And this also, creates a bigger deficit hole for them on the revenue side.
The Postal Service has been on 2 weeks before Christmas level volume for 6 months now. Think about that. It's been 2 weeks before Christmas for 6 months or 5 months, right?
Look, I've got a guy, I do this Friday night show thing, and I got a guy who he didn't know what the postage stamp was. And he was kind of railing against it. I'm thinking like, look, you don't understand actually. 55 cents to mail a letter, compare that to a lot of places in the world. It's cheap. Right. It's ridiculously cheap
in the world.
Yeah.
And it's a fourth of all the world's mail.
Yeah. I mean, how are you going to get, how I cannot, for 55 cents or, I think I have a lot of forever stamps I bought at 50 or less. So I cannot deliver mail, I cannot drive or do things any cheaper than they do to get, a piece of mail from here to the next neighboring city or whatever. The gas and whatever would go like that. So, I love that, but a lot of people don't understand that, post office it's cheap. It's extremely underpriced compared to a lot of other things.
Especially the package, especially for the large shippers.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. All right, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So we are still going on the old college football. So far, the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC have refused to fold. They're looking for one non-conference game each in the case of the ACC and the Big 12. No non-conference games for the SEC. parents are getting involved in the Big Ten. The big parents of Big Ten players are saying, you just foreclose our kids' future without asking us. These guys go out there and risk getting their neck broken every day, and you're saying, worry about the flu. You didn't even ask us. You didn't even ask them. You just, made your decision from on high, and we want it reconsidered. So, that may not be done. There's a lot. They got a lot. The Pac-12, it's kind of a wimp conference anyway. But the Big Ten, that's serious football. And some of those towns, some of those places, that's a big economic boost to them. It's like a guy was telling me yesterday, he goes to his parents tailgated at University of Indiana games. Now, Indiana's known for basketball. It's rarely been any good in football, right? So, but he says, there's 60,000 people there tailgating, meeting, networking, taking pride in their state and their degree and what they've accomplished every week in the fall for a terrible team. Imagine LSU, you have almost as many people outside watching it in their little tents and eating their, etouffee and whatnot as you do in the stadium, right? It's a 250,000 people there, on game day. So, you're saying give up all that income, and not only that, but, whatever your opinion is of football, the economics of college sports is basketball. They love it if you can break even in men's basketball. Women's, they know that's a loser. One school in the country, which happens to be LSU, makes money on baseball. It is the only one. They have about 7,800 season ticket holders. When you go to Omaha for the College World Series, there'll be about 5,000 LSU fans there, even when LSU is not in it, right? They just love college baseball for some reason. But all the rest of it, soccer, lacrosse, swimming, gymnastics, is paid for by football. So when you say you're taking away football, the other case is if you say you live in Michigan, you could go to Wayne County Community College, or you could go to Michigan State. Okay. If your classes are on Zoom, right, you're not getting college atmosphere, there's no football games, what would be the reason to pay all the extra money to go to Michigan State? What are you getting for that money? What is Michigan State, especially the first 2 years when you're taking your basics, right?
You could go to junior college for all that.
That's what I'm saying. Go to Wayne County Community College for at least 2 years and maybe more, because if they're not going to do the things that make that other experience special, then why are you doing it?
Right. All right. Yeah. And we even have, Justin Fields, the Ohio State quarterback. I mean, he had started a petition. I mean, there are players who want to play.
Right.
But I do think, right. And I do think, I mean, I love I know some people who will argue with your characterization of the Pac-12, but they're being controlled really by the West Coast, California and those things. Right. And so that's where that decision is really being made. And so therefore, I don't think that's a shock that they wimped out on us really quickly.
Also, all right. Other side of that is all those people not on campus means there's no campus activism, political activism.
Right.
There's no campus go to the polls, get out the vote efforts. Right. Right. There are people saying that could be 1.5 million, 2 million votes taken out of the election because of that. So right. Then where do those votes usually go? Probably not Trump, right?
That's right. That's right. All right. That's it. We've reached the end of the show. We're out of time. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Please always stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not, never, ever, ever let anyone tell you otherwise. God bless America. We will see you again next week. And we're done. All right. Thank you, buddy.
All right. It looks like I don't know where I'll be coming to you from next week. Okay. May or may not be here, but I'll have my stuff with me.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Check it out.
See you later.
All right.